If you're interested in building an elf commander deck, then this is the video for you. I'm going to break down the best mono green elves that can slot into basically any elf deck. So let's get started. Of all the commanders you can play in mono green elves, the top 5 paint a pretty good picture of what elves want to do. Marwyn the Nurturer is the most common commander you'll see. She gives you an immense amount of mana while also being a threat for commander damage if you can give her evasion. Elves have 2 roadblocks that they need to overcome: removal and evasion. Seri solves both of those by allowing you to regenerate your elves and with a game-ending pump spell. Eladamri helps circumvent the sometimes sporadic card draw mono green can suffer from by casting creatures off the top of your deck. He doesn't care specifically about elves, so you could also build him as a big creature commander to cheat them out with his activated ability. If you like Planeswalker commanders, Elves Llanoir's Fury is an excellent choice. If you don't, she goes just as well in the 99. Elves addresses all of the basic needs of pretty much any deck, being ramp, removal, and card draw. Maybe the most individually dangerous of the 5 is Imril Elfheim Elite. Imril is capable of sniping your opponents with a self-sufficient Voltron strategy, utilizing your board of elves to kill off the others in one fell swoop. A notable mention here is Eladamri, Lord of Leaves. He's actually in the top 5, but is $55, so we're going to skip over that. If your primary goal is to get elves out and work around them, which is generally the strategy of any elf ball deck, let's look at some of the big elf synergy pieces that we frequently use. Lyssalana Huntmaster and Elvish Warmaster are no-nonsense token creators. Lyssalana Huntmaster is a little bit better as it triggers whenever you play an elf, but sometimes your hand is empty. That's where Elvish Warmaster comes in as a much-needed engine. Imperious Perfect serves as another token engine, albeit not as potent, but also gives you an anthem to boot. Speaking of anthems, Elvish Champion has an anthem in Forest Walk. Galadrim Brigade can produce as many bodies with anthem as you can pay for with squad. And Jiraga Warcaller is Galadrim Brigade on a single body with multi-kicker. Anthems aren't the only utility we've got. Sure, Dwynen Guiltleaf Dayan has an anthem, but she also balloons your life total when you swing in. That's often enough to cause a scoop if it doesn't outright kill the table. Why even attack to gain life though? Well-Wisher can simply tap for a stim to your life total, and Essence Warden doesn't care specifically about elves, but who better to keep your life total in a healthy range. My personal favorite card for elf decks is Wolverine Riders. It's both a token and a life gain engine in one package and gives us something to dump all of our ramp into. Elvish Promenade, Elven Ambush, and Galadrim Ambush are very similar cards. Slam them to make a bunch of tokens, and in Galadrim Ambush's case, prevent combat damage coming your way after you've fully tapped out. Or you can just ensure you're outright killing people so tapping out isn't an issue. Sylvan Anthem is an anthem for all green creatures. Door of Destinies can get out of control at the drop of a hat, and Beastmaster Ascension's board-wide pump is usually game-ending. I don't usually play tutors, or really battles for that matter, but Invasion of Icoria's backside is another win con. Giving all your elves indiscriminate evasion is incredibly dangerous. Now that we've gotten through some of the better generic synergy cards, let's break them out by some of the basic needs of your deck, starting with card draw. Cards like Leafcrown Visionary are the MVPs of pretty much any deck. This card is ridiculously good for $5. Beast Whisperer does a pretty similar thing and is an elf to boot. We're very focused on casting creatures despite all the token creation I've talked about already. The perfect card to anchor our card draw needs that cards like Elvish Visionary and Llanoir Visionary help with, but only once. Modern Horizons 3 feels like it was just yesterday. Disciple of Freyalise is one of the great flip cards from the set. Not only does it have an incredible front side, it also has a land that is almost always coming in untapped on the back, just in case you need it. Now, I don't usually put Lifecrafter's Bestiary in my decks. Given how much mana we're generating, this feels like the perfect case to use it though. There may not be a consistent card draw option better than the Guardian Project in mono green. Is what I would say if Tribute to the World Tree didn't exist. Both are excellent and are staples in not only elf decks, but really any deck that has green. To round out, Card Draw, Vanquisher's Banner, and Skull Clamp are classic for any go-wide deck. Skull Clamp can be a bit more difficult to get value from due to just all the anthems in this deck, but it's often the most valuable in a pinch, and we need clutch cards like it should a board wipe sweep through. Elves are almost synonymous with ramp. Let's break down your options because there's almost too many to choose from. You won't find a card more commonly used in elf decks than Elvish Archdruid. An anthem attached to ramp is similar to Leafcrown Visionary's utility within the deck and is basically an auto-include. Llanoir Elves, Fyndhorn Elves, and Elvish Mystic are basically the same card. A 1-drop mana dork is incredibly potent if you manage to draw it early. For only 1 more mana, you've got an even stronger mana dork in Priest of Titania. Circle of Dreams Druid has only been printed once, so it's a bit expensive at the moment, but it performs similarly to Priest of Titania. My personal take is that the common ramp spells you see in green decks, Cultivate, Kodamas Reach, 3 Visits, etc., aren't very good in Elves. They aren't a body, and we have so much ramp available within Elves. Farhaven Elf and Sylvan Ranger are pretty much those ramp spells on a body that can get buffed up by your anthems and contribute to cards like Priest of Titania. Canopy Tactician falls into a similar category as Leafed Crowned Visionary and Elvish Archdruid. It's an anthem with ramp attached. Llanowar Tribe is 1 mana less and is still a staple in elf decks despite losing the anthem Canopy Tactician offers. And if your opponents are playing with elves, Wirewood Channeler gains even more value. Otherwise, it's just a more expensive Priest of Titania, but still quite strong. With how much ramp is available to elves, I wouldn't run Arcane Signet in monocolor elves. Sol Ring is pretty much the strongest card in Commander, so I'd still recommend you run it unless you're adverse to doing so. In monocolor decks, the medallions are excellent options. Emerald Medallion is no exception. Patchwork Banner is new to Magic from the Bloomburrow set, but it has quickly established itself as an excellent mana rock in Typal decks due to its anthem. The ramp isn't particularly needed in Elves, but the anthem is pretty useful. Growing Rites of Itlimoc is potentially a little bit of card draw with a land on the back that is basically Circle of Dreams Druid. And Cage Sun is a more expensive Patchwork Banner with significantly more ramp involved. If you've ever played a Typal deck, you know why Herald's Horn is on this list. If you haven't, Herald's Horn is a cost reducer and can draw you a card each turn if you're lucky. Just like the medallions, the Amonkhet monuments are great in monocolor decks as well. Ronnis's monument gives your elves the evasion they may need, a pump, and also cost reduction. It's a great package for only 3 mana. Green's removal lacks variety, but it can sometimes get the job done. There are a few elves with artifact and enchantment removal. Reclamation Sage is just the most common even in non-elf decks. Green's removal package, or maybe specifically Elves removal package, is pretty sparse. Beast Within, Kenneth's Transformation, Song of the Dryads, Crows and Grip, Nature's Claim, and Lignify are the most common options, but another great option, especially in Elves, is Windswift Slice from the Lord of the Rings set. For a board wipe, Azuri's Predation is one of your better options. If you want to splash something a bit spicy that doesn't involve creatures, Wave of Vitriol is probably your best option. Otherwise, it's time to start looking at some colorless board wipes. There's really no better saying for green than the best creature removal is player removal. I really like this comment I found on Reddit. I think it does a really good job explaining why mono green is the way it is. Utility lands are some of my favorite aspects when it comes to deck building. You've got some staples like War Room and monocolor decks, 3 Tree City and Nykthos Shrine to Nyx in Typal or Devotion decks, Fountain Port in, well, really any commander deck now, Boseiju Who Endures if you're willing to shell out for it, Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, and the list goes on. However, in mono green Elves, there are a few options you can play around with, and they're actually pretty budget friendly. Wirewood Lodge is specific to Elves, but it's excellent for cards like Priest of Titania. Castle Garenbrig offers even more mana for those multi-kickers and squad cards that we've included in the list. Mosswort Bridge allows you to cheat in a card once you reach 10 or more power, which is quite easy in Commander. With how many Elves we're casting or creating, or in Reef the Vastwood allows you to pretty easily pump them. Memorial to Unity is some emergency card draw for creature-heavy decks. It would really suck to sacrifice a land and miss, so make sure you're only running this if you have lots of creatures in your deck. As far as protection goes, Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots are pretty common to see on Elf lists. You pretty much want to run these in almost any Commander deck. My personal favorite for something like Elves is the card Fog. You swing out with a board of Elves, open yourself up to get knocked out, and then drop a Fog. If you want some graveyard recursion in green, Balaged Recovery is, generally speaking, the best way to do so. Creeping Renaissance is a great option too if you want some recursion that packs a bit of a bigger punch. And again, I don't really play tutors, but Elvish Harbinger is an example of one you can run. Those are the cards you'll usually see in nearly every mono green elf deck. There are a few cards you'll see splashed for commander-specific synergies. Let's take a quick look at those. Marwyn the Nurturer wants +1/+1 counters, so Immaculate Magistrate is a natural fit, while Copperhorn Scout has a mass untap effect for Marwyn's mana ability. Eladamri Corvic Doll allows you to cheat cards out and you can play creatures off the top of your deck. Untap cards like Curion Ranger, Wirewood Symbiote, Secret of Skybreak, Staff of Domination, and Thousand Year Elixir allow you to cheat out multiple cards each turn. Vitalize works great in any elf deck, but shines in Eladamri's 99. Finally, Oracle of Moldiah is great to help cut through your deck and ensure you aren't missing those land drops. Immaculate Magistrate also functions really well in Emeril's 99, but Timberwatch Elf is the type of pump we're looking for in a Voltron strategy. As we near the end of this video, I want to take a quick look at what mono green elves are good at. The first is ramp. both on their bodies, but more specifically by turning each creature into a value engine for the rest of your board. Galadrim Brigade versus Jorga Warcaller is a great example of how this has evolved over time. Those extra bodies from squad really matter. Mono green elves are also really good at getting value the wider your board goes. Dwynn Guiltleaf Dan wants a lot of elves on your board to bolster your life, and they're likely the best archetype for going as wide as possible. Just look at Elven Ambush and Elvish Promenade. Of course, if you're going to look at what's good, you should probably look at what's bad when it comes to mono green elves. Like any typal deck, it's a one-directional playstyle. You play elves, you go wide, and you swing in. There's not a ton of variety or tools in the box. They're also not very good at removal. They're decent for artifact and enchantment removal, but struggle with creature removal specifically. Again, the best creature removal is player removal. And finally, elves are not great when it comes to consistent card draw. You're often getting an ETB draw or casting a sorcery that requires you have a board in place. It's a little bit win more. Elves add an aggro element to the classic mid-range of mono green. Rather than ramping ahead to get your big creatures out as soon as possible, you're ramping to fill your board using lots of mana dorks. It's all about getting ahead of tempo with your resources and using that to overwhelm your opponent's board, similarly to a mono red deck, like goblins actually. Whether you're planning to stick with mono green elves or want to branch out a bit to 2 or 3 colors, that's the general list of what you're going to include from the green variety. Let me know if there's anything I've missed. Let me know if there's anything you would add. Let me know what elf commander you're most interested in. Until next time, peace.